How's it going, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to another edition of LandO's Lock-Ins. You know it, you love it. The series in which we do our darndest, the series in which we do our very best to try to make the most accurate CDL pick'em predictions possible. Ladies and gentlemen, it is our final week here at the Major 4 qualifiers. What a major it has been. All in preparation for the Major 4 tournament taking place in Columbus. It is going to be a fun, wild, and rarity time. This is your first time checking out the YouTube channel. First off, I want to say welcome. Like I said, this is a series where we go through the pick'em process. We talk about each and every single match, go in depth. You guys talk about it in the comments. We go back and forth. It's a fun time. We have great times here on this channel. I'd love for you guys to join us here in this journey of content. We are rapidly approaching 8,500 subscribers, so if you have not done so already, I highly suggest that you do like the video, that you interact in the comments. And I will say this, if you do like the channel, I recommend that you subscribe. You know what, have yourself a little 3-video challenge, right? You know, watch a few times, see if you enjoy what we're doing over here, whether it's caster reactions, if it's LandO's tiers, LandO's lock-ins, LandO's logic, where we dive into different subjects. Feel free, take your time, and from there, if you like what you see, I highly suggest that you join us along for the ride. So with that, let's go and take a look at how we did last week in predictions. Overall, okay, 70% on the week. You know, where we went right, nothing too crazy. I think the first day was pretty easy calls. The only question was, how is Minnesota going to play? You know, after their home series, they walk into that matchup versus New York. I was definitely a little worried about that one. NYSL actually got it done in the game earlier than I thought. This one, what the heck's what happened with Vegas? Like, what is going on with those guys? Cannot win a control to save their lives, unfortunately. So until they're able to do that, we will not see as much success as we probably should from the Vegas Legion. So that was definitely not a welcoming sight by any stretch. The other games, not hard to call. I felt like this one had a 3-1 written all over it. Battle of LA, Thieves finally get their first W. Decided to give OPTIC the nod. Felt good about that. They look good in that series. Went with Toronto. Definitely not the odds-on favorite in that match, considering that Ultra were 0-2 coming into that game versus FAZE. But I thought Toronto were going to wake up. They did, but it just took them a while, and it wasn't enough. And then the final day, thank God Vegas managed to clutch that out in Game 5. I was definitely sweating that one. Toronto did take down Florida Mutineers, so they finally do have a win on the board. And then for this one, it was controversial. Looking back at it, I definitely think that I should have gone OPTIC Texas, even considering my prediction was. I just wasn't like super solidified on the Thieves. I just thought the Thieves were actually going to spoil the party and just go 5-0 for whatever reason. So with that being said, let's go ahead and now jump into this week here of matches. 10 more games to go. And actually, if you notice the scoreboard at the bottom, we're at 91 overall. We have the chance to hit 100. Will we? That's going to be difficult. That's going to be very, very tough. At this point in the season, games are just very hard to call. But who knows? Like I said, I hope that we can hit 100 soon. That would be lovely. I'd love to do that before we actually go into the major, which I guess would be this week. So we'll see what happens. Let's go ahead and jump into our first game. And this is the exciting one. We're not waiting until the very end. We're not talking in the middle of the video. No, we are getting into this matchup off the start. Vegas Legion versus the Toronto Ultra. And you could be saying, Landon, what's the deal? Like, why is this a big deal, right? This is Vegas versus Ultra. I mean, I guess Ultra, a big game for them confidence-wise. No, this is a massive game, considering that Standy and Scrappy are not friends right now. They have definitely had their beef when it comes down to social media. I will not go into the specific conversations that they have had against one another, but there would be a lot of bleeps if I were to get too in the weeds about it. Standy dropped from Toronto Ultra. Toronto goes on to win the event. However, since then, they have not looked great. 1-3 record overall. Like I said, they did get that W versus the Mutineers in their last series. However, major questions, right, coming into this game versus the Vegas Legion. And it feels like since Standy has arrived in Vegas, you know, they do have that unfortunate series versus London where they dropped it 1-3. But since then, they look good. Like, they've looked good. Standy has had some unbelievable performances. I feel like I've watched the guy on like every hard point go on a 10 spree. It feels like TJ's been unlocked, and then it just feels like, you know, at times Temp and Clay are going to have their moments, but they really haven't had to go God mode all that often. So, with that being considered, this is, like I said, a huge game, not just because it's Standy versus Scrappy, not just because it is a, you know, grudge match. These guys are going to play each other but it's a huge game for both of these teams in the standing standpoint. Or standing standpoint? I don't know. You get my point. It's a huge matchup when it comes to where both these teams are going to sit moving into major number 4. Right now, Las Vegas Legion sits with a 2-1 record. They win this game, they improve to 3-1, and they have Florida tomorrow. So if they're beating Ultra, if they are 3-1, they are definitely looking good to finish 4-1, which would put them as a very, very high seed. So you'd love that if you're a Vegas fan. On the flip side, for Toronto, they currently are 1-3. So the cards are out there, right? Vegas can still lose this series but get into winner's bracket. For Toronto, if they lose this game, they're in losers, right? You cannot go 1-4 and make it into the winner's bracket. So this is a huge game for Ultra. The fact that they can lose this game versus Vegas and just be one series away from getting knocked out at Major 4 after just winning Major 3, that would be terrifying. It would. I mean, that would be terrifying for the team's confidence. It'd be terrifying, I think, as a player on the team, because confidence-wise, it's shot. It's like, guys, we came through, we won. Maybe we let the foot off the gas pedal a little bit, and we, I don't know what the placement could be. Like, let's say they go at top 8. I mean, that is not what we expect from this Ultra team that just added Hixie and took off. So again, this is going to be a fun matchup. I think it's fair to say we're going to see our best version of Scrappy. We're going to see our best version of Standy. We all know it that, whenever you do have a teammate who has been dropped from a team, the first time that you play that roster again, the entire team tries to rally around that. So I think that Clay and the boys are going to be trying to go hard, get this W for Standy. Obviously, like we said, it is massive for Vegas Legion. They can guarantee winners in this game. They can also deny Toronto a guaranteed spot at winners. But for Ultra, you're holding on by a thread. And when it comes down to predictions, I actually am curious the way that fans are going. So 80% to 20%, which is interesting because, like I said, I thought maybe given the Vegas support, I know there's a lot of Toronto fans. I thought given the interest of the series, it always does feel like when a player faces off against his old franchise for the first time, they always get the dub. So I thought it'd be a little higher than that. But I think when you look at the details of this series, this to me is going to come down to the control, sadly. Because, right, you do have Toronto, who obviously can look good in the hard points. I know S&D for them lately has been shaky. So there was definitely a chance where Vegas win the opening hard point. They're going to really test Toronto's search and destroy, of which they have not looked good in S&D by any stretch so far. And then maybe, what happens is that Vegas ends up giving up the control. It's okay. And then we have a hard point. This is the issue, right? If this was any other team and they were at least okay at control, you could sell me on that. Like you could sell me on a Vegas Legion upset here versus Toronto if they weren't god awful at control. But they are. Like, how many controls have Vegas lost in a row? 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. They have lost 10 controls in a row. And they just recently lost to LAG. They just recently lost to London, who were the other worst control team in the game, and they lost to them in a 3-0. So for me, I think it's fair to say 100%. I mean, Vegas Legion have looked so much better in hardpoint. To me, the vetoes are going to be important. I think it's going to come down to little details. But the issue for me is that at some point, Toronto are guaranteed to win a game. Vegas Legion technically are not. And when Ultra are firing, which they should be in this series, considering that this is massive momentum-wise, this is to give them a chance to get winner's bracket. This is a chance for them to get the Standy problem off their back once and for all, close out that story. You got to think they're going to come out. They're going to come out and play their best COD, which, like I said, whenever they typically do, they're a good team across all modes. On top of it all, by the way, I didn't even mention this, Vegas Legion, by far the worst control team in the game. Toronto are the best control team in the game. I know they did lose an LSCLO versus FAZE recently. Regardless of it, it's the number 1 control team versus the number 12 control team. I think for Ultra, I would like, if you're looking at the hard points, I think that they trade versus Vegas, which means that it's 2-1. And then it comes down to, how do I feel like that game 2 search and destroy is going to go? I like Vegas definitely there more. However, given the importance of this series, I think we could see Ultra actually come through with their head on straight. They did recently win an Embassy versus Florida, which was huge. They did go down to a round 11 versus FAZE on Hotel, which was huge. Versus Seattle, they lost both. Versus Boston, they lost both. So, like I said, for Toronto, SD by no means has been great for them. But I don't know. Like, I hesitate because to me, it's going to be so game mode specific. I feel like if Vegas comes out, wins the opening hardpoint, Toronto wins the S&D. I also feel like it's flip-flopped the same direction. Regardless, I'll be honest, I'm going to go for Ultra, and it pains me because I would love to give Vegas Legion the upset here. But I can't. I just can't. Like, you cannot sell to me the likelihood that Vegas Legion comes out, oh, they're going to surprise, they're actually going to win a control, when they have shown no signs of improvement in that game mode. It's the one mode that continues to hold them back and will forever do that until they can start to get a few W's on the board. So it's annoying. I'm actually like trying to figure out a way to maybe choose Vegas in this series, but I just can't see it. I really don't. I just don't see it happening. I think that Vegas are a very solid team right now. I think they, like I said, I think they trade hard points. I think they can win an S&D without question versus Ultra. I think it just goes down to the wire. Toronto just are the better team. And this is more of me just hoping that it goes to a game 5. I think potentially it is Toronto maybe winning this in a 3-1, but I just feel like no matter where we're at, I think if Toronto's up 2-1, Vegas Legion can answer back in a game 4. So it's a hard prediction to exactly call, but I do feel like this grudge match will end out with Toronto getting a much needed and a must needed win over Vegas, give them a chance to get winner's bracket. And then for Vegas, they would be 2-2 going into that matchup tomorrow versus Florida. Let's go ahead and jump into this next one. We'll go over this one quick because, to be honest, I think this is going to be a pretty quick series. OPTIC versus LAG. Huge favorites in this series. Question marks around OPTIC Texas. Are they the best team in the game? I chatted about it recently on an edition of LandO's Logic. I highly suggest that you check that one out. We were talking about what does it mean to be the best team in the game. Does OPTIC deserve to have that title right now, considering that we are technically only 3 games into, their Major 4 qualifier campaign, but they've been on a wild hardpoint run. I calculated, again, I talked more in depth about this in that LandO's Logic episode. However, I went in depth and I discussed that so far in Major 4, they are beating teams in hardpoint by an average of 105 points. Their rotations ever since this team has come together are fantastic. Their breaks are fantastic. Their plus minus is double the team that is in second place since this team has formed and other teams have been together in hardpoint. And then on the other side for LAG, talk about the underdogs, which again, they will absolutely be that in this series. There's definitely a chance where they can wake up. Again, I never doubt that the Gorillas are not a good team. The problem for me is just simply the fact that they don't have an identity. Like, sometimes they're winning hard points, sometimes they're winning S&Ds, sometimes they're winning controls. I know I've talked your ears off about this for weeks now, but it's frustrating. They had the chance to lock up that series versus Vegas. They get 6-0 on a Mercado S&D. But again, it felt like LAG was starting to put the pieces together in Search. But so far, they have just not been great in the Search Destroy. I think they're 1-3 so far throughout our Major 4 qualifiers. For OPTIC Texas, question marks on, what's their weakest game mode right now. Obviously, it's going to be a conversation between S&D and Control. I need to see a bigger sample size in Control. I think, they started off very rough and they started to make some major improvements. They have gone 1-1 in Expo, which to me is going to be a big deal. But just in general, I'm not going to beat around the bush. I think this is going to be an OPTIC W, and I think it's going to be a swift one. Like I said, is there potential for LAG to make this a good one? I think so. But I think the only chance that I see is maybe LAG winning a Search and Destroy, and that is basically it. But I don't think that it happens. I think OPTIC come through, overwhelm them in the hard point, take that momentum, carry it into the Search Destroy, lock up that, and then maybe they win a Control in like a round 5. And that's the way that this one ends out. Jumping into our last game of Friday, Minnesota versus Atlanta FAZE. ROKKR, after the 2-0 start, finally met their match last week versus New York, lost 3-1, started off well on a hotel hardpoint, but lost every single map from that point. And then now Minnesota comes into this series versus Atlanta FAZE, which is a tough draw, right? The issue for Minnesota is that their schedule started off very light, and then as time has gone on, it has gotten much more difficult, and arguably gets more difficult the deeper that you go. In that series versus New York, Afro just simply did not play well. Goes -23 at 0.71 in the series. Definitely that is going to have to be better versus an Atlanta FAZE team who just got a lot more confidence after the W versus Toronto. Granted, I get it, right? This is a Toronto team that is definitely weaker right now, that is not looking, wonderful at the moment. But they really needed that. They absolutely needed that. Atlanta is, I forget the exact, numbers, but I'm pretty sure that they are, if they lose that series versus Toronto, they would have lost 4 of their last 5 series. And we would have been talking about how hardpoint, they just cannot win a hardpoint. But thankfully, they actually have been starting to win a few hardpoints here and there. It's not been versus, elite level teams. Like I said, Toronto is, but they just don't look like it right now. They have won a hardpoint versus Florida. They did win a hardpoint versus Toronto. But they still have yet to win. I think, what is it now? It's up to 17 series, I want to say. In series that have seen a game 4 or a game 5, Atlanta FaZe has not won both hardpoints in a set like that in their last 16 to 17 series that have gone to at least a game 4 or a game 5, which is not promising. But the positive for Atlanta is that you're supposed to be elite at search and destroy. So getting into predictions for this, I don't know. Like, I'm still a little hesitant about FaZe, but at the same token for Minnesota, I don't know. Like, I just feel like there's a little bit of me that thinks that maybe there's something special about ROKKR where they could make this a series. There's also a token to me that says, you know what, Minnesota, they're still good. I mean, they've definitely improved, of course, but they're still just not amazing. I think there's an element to where you could see, Minnesota start to play some much better COD in this series, just playing up to their competition. But I think getting into the nitty gritty, I like Atlanta more in the S&Ds. I'd like Atlanta to trade at least in the hard points. And I feel like Atlanta right now is looking phenomenal in control. They've had a Hotel 3-1 victory over New York, who's great at that map. They get a 3-0 smoke on Hotel control versus Florida. They do get to play the LOCLO versus Toronto, which is still a great map for Ultra. They managed to 3-1 them on that map. And then for Minnesota so far in control, they are 2-1, just lost one to New York on Hotel. So I think for predictions, we'll look at the what the poll is saying, 94% to just 5. Well, I guess it's 6, so 94 to 6. Definitely think it's a little closer than that, but I'm going to say that it is going to be a 3-1 victory here for Atlanta FaZe. Again, Minnesota, I think that they are not a bad squad. I think they've definitely seen improvements. I just feel like you're facing off against Atlanta, who is still a questionable team, but I just don't like Minnesota enough in the hard points to say this is a chance. This is ROKKR's opportunity to surprise them in the hard points. I just have not seen enough of that yet to be proven otherwise. So let's go ahead and talk about our first match of Saturday, New York versus London. NYSL are off of that loss versus OPTIC Texas. Last week, 2 HP losses, and this is a huge week for a number of different teams, NYSL included, as they currently sit with a 2-1 record. They have got to face off against London, and specifically they have a match versus Boston. So if you are NYSL, you definitely want to get a W here versus Ravens before you take on the Breach in the last series of this online qualifier. So big one for NYSL. You want to win this one here. On the other side for London, a better week, right? A much better week than the opening one that we saw from the Royal Ravens. They start off 0-2, 0-6 in maps. Then they end up waking up versus Breach. I was pleasantly surprised. I had that cast. They woke up on Fortress Hardpoint and then just started to slow down a little bit. They end up losing 3 games in a row versus Breach, but then they come into that series versus Vegas Legion, get dominated in the opening Hydro Hardpoint, and then they go on to win, right? They win an S&D, which then allows for them to bring a control victory out of that one versus Vegas, who, like I said, cannot win a control to save their life. And then they just brought it into the Embassy Hardpoint. They managed to win it by 25 points. And there you go. That's what it takes to get a W. And in that series, Scraps looked fantastic, put up a 1.37 after he has had a very, very slow start to the Major 4 qualifiers so far. Again, does this make me a little excited about my Ravens pick? Does it make me, I guess, elevate myself a little bit? Like, look, Lennon, so you knew there was something special about the Ravens. Slightly, but just not enough at all. I was somebody who on my tier list put Ravens above a bunch of other teams, above the bottom 3, because I felt like they showed promise in Major 3. They made the right roster changes, in my opinion, picked up somebody like Yuli, who I thought would unlock a seed, would see a consistent Scraps, and maybe a player in Nasty who's starting to really come into his own game. And they start off 0-3. One map technically to their name, even though that map was a good one. But they do get the W versus Vegas, which is definitely promising. I think it was more of a Vegas loss, to be honest, than more of a London W. And I think for New York, they're a great team. They're a great online team, especially like I said, you want to try to get the W here. New York is a good hardpoint team, even though they technically have lost 3 of their last 4. So I think the NYSL, definitely you like them in the opening hardpoint, or just to trade hardpoints at the very least. And then London, it's really just about what are you going to give us? Like, are you going to be good in S&D? Are you going to be good in control now? Like, I don't really know. I think it's possible that they could be good, maybe both at search, destroy, and control. That could be an opportunity where they get New York in a bit of a chokehold if they win that opening hardpoint. However, we'll go and take a look at the fan poll quickly, and another massive swing for the subliners. I think it's a little closer than that, but I am going to still stick with the New York subliners here. I'm going to say that it's a 3-1, maybe even a 3-2. I'll actually say it goes to a game 5. I don't know. I still have my doubts about subliners. We'll talk about them in our next series versus Boston. But this is a major game for NYSL. They need to take this, get this W down. Then you face off against Boston, and you still have a chance to make winners. And then obviously, if London do end up losing this match, they are currently at 1-3. That make them finish off the season 2-3. If they lose this game, they'd be 1-4. If they do win this, they're 2-3. But I do hesitate considering their map count record and stuff. If there are a few other teams who are in that 2-3 category, you'd be a little concerned about what London did in their opening 3 losses, only having 1 W, 9 losses during that time. So we'll go ahead and jump on forward now to Vegas Legion versus Florida. I have Vegas off of a massive series versus Toronto, one that they definitely could come out on top in. And if they win that, they are strolling into this series 3-1, feeling very good. And if not, they would be 2-2, which is what I have them at. So again, for Vegas, 3-1 or 2-2, a much different situation mentality-wise, a much different situation confidence-wise. I think depending on how that opening game does go versus Ultra. But I think they actually do send them to 5 games, which I think is still impressive, even though they don't have that guaranteed winners bracket spot yet. But they're facing off against a Florida team that right now is 0-4. A Florida team that just continues to frustrate me. A Florida team that, much like other teams right now in the league, just don't have an identity. I thought, okay, like after they lost that opening series versus Minnesota, I was like, okay, I don't know what's going on with them right now. Why was there not a roster change made? Then they send FAZE to a game 5, and it's like, okay, like we saw something there. Like we saw Capsule go off. Then they had that series versus Seattle. I think I don't know what I predicted for that. I think I actually thought it was going to be decently close. Florida looked great in the search to destroy. It looks promising, but they just don't win a single respawn. And then versus Toronto, we're talking big about search to destroy. They get 6-2 on Embassy, a map they just beat Atlanta FAZE on in around 11. And don't win any other map. They get dominated in the Mercado. They go to around 5 in Expo, but big deal. So Florida 0-4, no chance at all that they can make winners bracket. You wonder what the mentality would be right now of this team. I guess at the same time for Vegas, this is like, again, this is a wonderful series to wind yourself, or rather to wind up in, even if whether you're off a win or if you're off a loss. I think if Vegas wins that series versus Toronto, there is no question in my mind they finish off 4-1. If Vegas loses that series versus Toronto, I think that they still feel very good coming into this matchup versus Florida. Reason being is that Florida, not great in respawns right now. So far in Major 4, they are a combined total of 1-9 in hardpoint and control. The reason why that makes you very excited if you're Vegas is because, hey, guaranteed hardpoint victory. Control, you know what? At least they're bad at control too, so maybe we could do something here. And then in search destroy, sometimes Florida good, sometimes Florida bad. Vegas are a good search destroy team. There's no doubt about it. So I really like Vegas in this series. I think so much so that there's a chance that they could finish off with a 3-0 here, maybe even win a control. And I'm going to say that they do. I don't know. I'm just going to go with Vegas looking good in this series. I think if you're Florida, you're 0-4. You lose that opening hardpoint. You lose the search and destroy. I think this is Florida's best chance, or rather, Vegas's best chance of winning a control. So I think that Vegas, just confidence-wise, come through, look good early, go up 2-0, and then depending on what the control map would be, I think the Florida, like I said, you're 1 map away from finishing 0-5. Like I don't know where the confidence level is at if you're the Mutineers, and then if you're just talking game mode-wise, if you're just talking historical-wise, like I said, Florida, they just have not been able to win controls lately either. So with that, that is a W in the books for Vegas. They get their qualification spot and winners, finishing 3-2 for the first time, I think, in CDL history. I know home series and MW, you can't really count that, but since Cold War and on, I believe this is the first time that Vegas, or Legion rather, as a franchise, have finished in the winners bracket, which is great, wonderful for them. OPTIC versus Boston, double points. This to me is a rivalry series, as far as I'm concerned. If you were at the Texas Major, you know why. If you were not at the Texas Major, you may be a little confused about that. The reason being is that we all know the results, right? Boston comes out, first match, facing off against OPTIC. What do? They 3-0 them. Beans drops a 17 kill LSC low search destroy, which was unbelievable. Like I said, 17 kills. Where did that come from? And then OPTIC end up going down in the losers bracket. What do? They beat team after team after team. They roll up, they play Boston, they beat them, get their revenge, all the while that it was funny. I was in the crowd. I was interviewing a few of the Boston players during, the entire tournament. They came out loving Beans, loving Breach after OPTIC beat them. During the interview, I have never heard more trash talk to a player than I have whenever I was interviewing Beans after he just smoked OPTIC. So there was a lot, it feels like, of fans out there, a lot of OPTIC fans who are very, very eager to watch Breach burn. But in all seriousness, getting kind of back into the actual, situation where we stand at the moment. For OPTIC Texas, I have them off of the win versus LAG. I think that's a fast series. So this is a chance, if you're Texas, to finish off 5-0. A chance to, without a doubt, have that winner's bracket spot, to have that number 1 seed. And I will say this, I hope that OPTIC Texas doesn't take their foot off the gas pedal in this series. I don't care if it technically does not matter, but I hope that they don't. Because for Breach, they have a lot to play for, right? If you're OPTIC, if you beat LAG, you're good, right? You're 4-0, you're fine, not a problem in the world. I don't think that an OPTIC Texas team who looks wonderful right now, like again, we're talking about how they can be the best team in the game. I hope that they don't stroll into this being like, this is going to be a dub. This is going to be an easy series. Because it's not. I don't think this is going to be an easy series for Texas. I think this is going to be actually a very competitive series for the Boston Breach, because this is going to be their second series with Kremp. And like I said, for Breach, huge sense of urgency. They made this roster change for a reason. They made this roster change to try and become that elite team that we've been waiting for Boston to become since they formed and became a CDL franchise. They have got OPTIC, followed up by New York the following day. Kremp and his debut versus London looked good. That opening map started off a little slow in the Fortress, then started to pick things up a bit. It feels like a lot of the, conversation around Breach is, that Kremp looked good in the series. It feels like he's going to be kind of a caller for them in Search Destroy. Just be another solid player in that mode for the team, which is great. So I think for Breach, they're definitely improving in Search, which is where you could see a moment of opportunity be gained versus OPTIC Texas. You have Beans on the snipe. You have Kremp, who's trying to be the playmaker. I mean, you can never doubt Big Wake, and then Nero is somebody who can just take over in games, especially in Search Destroys from time to time. So there's an opportunity there. But again, excited to see what the new additions of Breach can do. It just feels like all 4 players have pop-off potential, and I think that's what you're really looking for out of a lot of teams in the CDL. OPTIC obviously is a team who also has the ability for all 4 players at different times to have pop-off potential. And then I will say, when we get into more of the predictions, we'll actually take a look at the fan poll for this, 90-10 in favor of OPTIC Texas. I will say the moment of opportunity here, if you're Breach, if you lose the game 2 Search and Destroy, you're just going to straight up lose the series. That is the way that I look at this. I think that OPTIC comes out, wins the opening hardpoint. Is there a chance that I think that Boston could come through and surprise? Yes. But just given how great that OPTIC Texas has looked in opening HPs, just in hardpoint in general, it is very tough to say that they are going to lose any of them, especially versus Boston here. So I think if Boston comes out, wins the opening hardpoint, this is a very different series. If OPTIC wins it and they also win the Search Destroy, I think this one is done quick. However, to be honest, I think this is going to go OPTIC game 1, Boston game 2. Control for me is up in the air, and depending on who wins the control, I think loses the hardpoint. We go to a game 5, and I'm going to say that OPTIC takes it. Like I said, I think this is going to be a fun, competitive series. I think there's a chance where Breach come out of the gates, look good. Maybe play OPTIC close in the hard point, maybe win it. But specifically, I'm eyeing up for them to win that game 2 search and destroy. We'll see. Again, a lot of things have to go right in order for that to take place. Vetoes, etc. I just threw my pen on the ground. But I am going to say that OPTIC wins this in a game 5. I think it's a close series. I think we do see Big Wake reach some wonderful levels. I think for Kremp, right, this is a huge opportunity for you. You go from facing off against London to now facing off against OPTIC Texas, where they are absolutely going to need you. We're talking about Slang. This is what he's come onto this team to do. We talked about how he's come onto this team to be a great search destroy player. Now is the time to prove it. I like Kremp a lot. I think he's able to put up a solid showing here versus Texas. Let's go ahead and jump into our final matchup here of Saturday. Atlanta FaZe taking on the Seattle Surge. Always a fun series. Personally, my favorite matchup, possibly in CDL history. Atlanta versus Surge on the year. FaZe at Major 1 smokes Seattle 3-0. Another matchup at Major 1 takes place. Seattle beats them at Major 1 in a Game 5 round 10. They don't play each other for an entire major. Then we roll in to Major 3. We're in the middle of a phenomenal series between these two. Goes down to a Game 5 round 11 on Embassy. Simp gets a crucial 2 kills, one of which is a hip fire kill onto Pred in bottom orange. Pred loses that gunfight. Meanwhile, Simp escapes with 1 HP. That is how close that these series have been historically versus these rosters. I mean, we can go back to Cold War. We can go back to Vanguard last year. How many wild results that have taken place between these two franchises. Multiple, and I mean multiple, Game 5 round 11s, of which some of the greatest maps in CDL history are between these two teams just in the last 2 years. Does this one have the chance to deliver? I think it absolutely does. Like, I think from all accords, from all accounts, this is a Seattle team who is trying to elevate. This is an Atlanta FaZe team who, to me, currently looks a little shaky right now. And so I think there is absolutely a chance that we see another crazy and wild Game 5, round 10, round 11 type of situation. I actually want to pull up the fan poll for this one early. 75-25. Okay, so a lot of FaZe respecters, a lot of FaZe fans here rooting on their boys to win this one. Actually, keep that up while we talk about this a little further. FaZe, huge win over Toronto. I know I talked about that my last opportunity to discuss FaZe, where they are technically off of the victory versus Minnesota. Regardless of it, I will say we got to talk about this first. If FaZe do lose that series versus Minnesota, they would be 2-2. So you really want to win this. But at the same time, I do have them winning that, which means that they would be 3-1. Only loss would be in a Game 5 round 11 versus New York. So FaZe, in my eyes, at this point, are sitting very pretty in that combo. However, like I said, the series versus Minnesota will be big. The series prior to that one versus Ultra, to me, was massive. I'm still worried about their hard point. I still don't feel like it is 100% solid. I don't know if they'll really be tested versus Minnesota the way that I'm sure some people may think that it could be. I think the teams are day and night taking a look at their search destroy strats. If I am Seattle, I am watching FaZe. I'm watching the way the teams play FaZe night and day in preparation for this matchup. Seattle stroll into this game at 2-1 overall, currently in the standings. So this is a big game for them as well. You walk away with this dub, you're then 3-1, and you have a date with LAG tomorrow, a game that you should absolutely win. So it feels like for Seattle, you win this, you should finish off 4-1, and you have a wonderful seed moving in to the Major 4 event. But the big thing for Seattle lately is that it's not been all about Pred, right? Accuracy is hitting unbelievable levels right now. Pretty sure he leads the team in Major 4 in pretty much every respawn category, which is wild. It feels like at times in Search Destroy, Pred hasn't had to be the superstar. I mean, there was a time where there was like a 7 or 8 game stretch where Pred had a total of like 65 kills. The next highest player had like 30. So he was taking over for the team. You've seen a much better team performance overall to see Pred hitting those levels. Accuracy to be hitting those levels. We know what Pred can do, obviously. We know what Sib can do, obviously. And we know the potential that Mac has whenever he is on. So with that in mind, I like Seattle in the hard points. I know that FaZe are currently in the midst of trying to translate their online scrimmages to their, actual matches. I like Seattle more in the hard points here, even though they have had their fair share of losses. They lose 2 to LA Thieves. They do lose a Fortress to Toronto. But I like Seattle more in the hard points. I think that you should prefer Atlanta more in the S&Ds, even though it's Seattle versus Atlanta. So you kind of throw those out the window. And then both teams have been in very good form, in control, whether it's been El Asilo or Hotel, at least, from a consistency basis. I know that Toronto technically just beat Seattle 3-0 on a Hotel. However, prior to that, Seattle had looked good on it, and have a good record on it. But predictions, you guys know where I'm going. Game 5. Game 5, who takes it? I am going with Seattle. I am. I think that Seattle end up walking away with this game. I think this is another one of those classic type of matchups. Is it me wishing it, hoping it, speaking it into fruition? Probably. But I just feel like right now it's fair to say Seattle can upset FaZe and S&D, as many teams have. Seattle absolutely can not just win both the hard points, but at least, in my opinion, trade the hard points. And then in control, I think it's a mixed bag. So, there are some 50-50 type things, but I definitely, if you're talking about like a scale, I like Seattle just that bit more. That's the reason why I have them winning in game 5. Also because it feels like every time that these teams face off in a very important series, it goes to a game 5. And we're going to continue to talk about Seattle. Obviously, they would be coming off of a huge win versus FaZe. If not, they would be 2-2. However, I have them being 3-1. So if you are Surge, a lot of people are going to predict that they lose that game versus FaZe, and I think for sure Surge are going to come into this being like, okay, we're 2-2. We need to get this. Guarantee winners. Let's not even worry about it. However, I feel like that Surge are going to be feeling even better, considering that they know that they're in the winners bracket, know that they're facing off against an LAG team who I predict, after losing in a 3-0 to OPTIC Texas, are going to stroll into this game versus Seattle and also not look that wonderful either. I think this is going to be a 3-0 or 3-1. I might just say 3-0, just to kind of probably get one of these right. I don't think the LAG get 0-6 in maps this week. And I just don't really have the heart to choose which one it is. So let's go ahead and move on. Seattle, they end out things 4-1. Massive W versus Atlanta FaZe, one of our top seeds. Let's go ahead now and take a look at LA Thieves versus Minnesota. This is for double points. LAT a bit dazed after their series versus OPTIC. All the maps that they lost were not really close, right? The hard points, not close. The S&D was like a 6-1 or 6-2. Envoy did not have a great series. Definitely expect him to turn that around. He had like a 0.7 overall KD versus the Texas squad. So I think that he obviously turns that around. For LAT, they managed to accomplish what they wanted to, which is getting winners bracket. That's really what you want if you're a Thieves fan. It's what you want if you're a Thieves player. Let's guarantee winners and do what we need to from that point on. I think that they lose that series versus Texas. That is a team that, to me, always will take a look at the VOD, learn from their mistakes, and try to adapt to it. I think the Thieves, despite losing both hardpoints to Texas, are still one of the best, if not the second best hardpoint team in the game. So you have that going for you. If you are ROKKR, they technically would be 2-2 at this point. And potentially, who knows? There could be a lot of scenarios. We'll definitely know what the scenario is for ROKKR at this point, depending on how the results go. So 2-3, if you're Minnesota, you might have to win this game to guarantee winners. You may just have to win like 2 maps. Like you might just have to force it to a game 5. I'm not exactly sure. So there's a chance when that element comes into this. But for LAT, you're 3-1. For ROKKR, you are 2-2 in my predictions. They could beat Atlanta. However, I hesitate to say that. We'll bring up the fan poll, and you will see that in this, I was actually going to bring this up. Last 3 times, and this is all this season, that LAT has played ROKKR this year, it has been 3-0s, right? Whenever Minnesota was at their peak at the Major 2 event, Bance and Afro, different levels. LAT's like, okay, cool, we're just going to 3-0 you. Major 3 qualifiers, where Minnesota is not at their peak, looking horrible. LAT 3-0s them. When it comes down to Major 3, LA Thieves, off of a recent loss versus Atlanta FaZe, where they get 3-0'd, what do? In their next match versus ROKKR, they 3-0 them. 9-0 on the year. Whether LAT has faced the best or worst version of ROKKR this season, they have beaten them, and they have beaten them badly. The only question for me, is it a 3-0 or is it a 3-1? I think for Thieves, like I said, this is your only matchup this week. For Minnesota, I mean, this is just tough. I mean, this is tough, right? Very, very bottom heavy schedule considering you face Florida and LAG on LAN. And then you go on to face off against New York, FAZE, and Thieves. There's also an element to this where we could be talking about, ROKKR, even though their schedule was very bottom heavy, everybody's going to be talking about how, they, got to play in front of their fans. And, look what happens whenever ROKKR's not playing in front of thousands of fans cheering their name. I don't agree with that, but, it is what it is. But the big thing for ROKKR to me is that you don't have to finish a winner's bracket. You don't have to win these last 2 games. Just look good. Like, just win a few maps. Make these series competitive. Maybe go to a game 5 versus one of those teams. I would still take that as a W when it comes down to a roster that I just still feel like is not unbelievable at this moment. So there is that to bring up here. But I think this is going to be a 3-1 victory here for LAT. I just feel like for ROKKR, you have a lot to fight for. There's going to be a lot of scenarios, a lot of things that we're talking about coming into this game. That does make me think that ROKKR actually could maybe even win this series. However, I am going to say at this moment, Thieves win at 3-1, but revisit this matchup on Sunday. And then I would also be taking a very good look at, what are the standings saying? What are the results? What does Minnesota have to do in order to guarantee winner's bracket? Is it just 1 map? Is it 2? Do they have to win the whole thing? That to me will play a huge factor in this series. But I think the safe pick is just to say that LAT win versus ROKKR again, make it 4-0 on the year. And that now leads us to our final matchup here in the Major 4 qualifiers. And this one might be the hardest one to predict. Boston versus New York, a classic battle, one of the more fun series to watch, whether it's online or on LAN, just given, the fan bases, given, just the cities in general, Boston versus New York. It's always fun to watch these teams face off against each other. For Breach, you are off the series versus Texas, so you are either 2-2 or 3-1. I have them at 2-2, but I still think that they have a chance to beat Texas in that series. I want to stress that. I feel like that one is going to go the distance. So, like I said, there are higher odds, in my opinion, for Breach to come into this 3-1 than a lot of other people think, even though I still have them at 2-2. We'll bring up predictions for this. I feel like we're going to learn a lot about Boston, which makes this prediction, like I said, one of the more elements of what makes this one more difficult is that, for Boston, all that we've seen so far is that they 3-1 London with Crimp. What are they going to look like, versus Texas? Is it going to be a close game? I'm personally predicting that Boston do go to a game 5 versus Texas, which would mean that obviously Breach looked pretty good at the very least. This would be the 3rd series with Crimp, so I think it's fair to say he is definitely now at his most comfortable state with the team. You had that series versus London where he looked good, had some solid moments. You had that series versus Texas. Boom, right? Biggest series that you can really have. And then now you're facing off against New York. And it's like, okay, I can relax now. Like, I'm not relaxed, but you get my point. Like, I can actually, dive into my game, do what I need to do. So there is that aspect. For New York, they should be off of the win versus London, which would make them 3-1. If not, this is a must-win series for NYSL. So that is really what I want everybody to think about when it comes down to this prediction. This, to me, is already dicey. This has the potential to be even more dicey if you have Ravens beating New York and Boston losing to OPTIC, because in this scenario, that would then make New York 2-2 and Boston 2-2. Both teams, you're obviously recognizing it. One team's going to guarantee winners. The other team is not guaranteed winners. Who knows how that will look? But there is a very good chance that if, London does upset New York, that we come into this series being like, what in the world is going to happen? Like, what are the results going to be? We're going to be having every stats person in the world trying to bring out their notebook to tell us what needs to be done for either team to qualify or for both teams to try and qualify. Now, predictions for this series, I think this is very accurate. 55-44, give New York a bit of an edge, just considering they are a great online team, given the fact that they should be 3-1. Boston, like I said, should be 2-2 if you're going off of fan predictions as well as technically mine. But I think when it comes down to it, I am going to give Breach the edge. I think that they have the chance to be solid across all modes. That is the reason why they made this roster change. I am in favor of the move that they made. Even though a lot of people were hesitant to say that Vivid should not have been removed from the team, I think Vivid's a phenomenal player. I've said it multiple times. I think that he actually can be better suited for a different team. I feel like his skill set can actually be unlocked better on a different roster. So I like the moves that Boston have made this season, investing in their challenger team, investing in their academy team. I think they're going to be a very good search and destroy team. And they're also a team that can win respawns. Like, they have respawn, they have the chance to win respawns. So how often can you say that a solid S&D team has the chance to win respawns? That is typically going to be a very solid roster. The issue with me in New York, right, is that I feel like they're either winning hardpoints or they're winning search destroys, not at the same time. They did that at Major 1, but it feels like, for me, like I said, they're either winning one, not both. At least on a consistent basis is what I'm trying to say. So with that in mind, I give Breach the edge in that category. I think they come through, win the opening hardpoint. I think they maybe win the search destroy, if not win the control, and they lock up the hardpoint. It may be a surprising pick, considering a very difficult week for Breach, but I think there is a certain element to this, to where New York feeling good. They beat the Ravens. Like I said, I have them at 3-1 coming into this. For Boston, this is a must-win, probably at this point. At least you got to make it close. I like the Breach decision. I think Kremp has a solid game here, and they give New York a bit of a headache moving into the Major 4 tournament. So with that, we will go ahead and save our predictions, lock those in for now. Again, you always have the chance to go back, change predictions, but I am going to definitely keep these the same, unless we hear something drastic, on socials, maybe like a player or something like that. But otherwise, those are going to remain the same. We will definitely maybe make a few tweaks here and there, depending on how a few of these matches begin to go. But that is going to do it for this episode of LandO's Lock-Ins. Thank you guys so much for checking this one out. It is going to be fun. It's going to be a blast to see how the Major 4 qualifiers wind out. Can OPTIC Texas officially get that #1 seed? Who's going to win the grudge match between Vegas and Toronto? I've given my picks. Now it's time for you guys to give yours. Scroll down, go to the comments, and let me know your guys' thoughts on the questions that I will have down there for you. Without further ado, thank you so much for checking out this video. Thank you so much for checking out the other videos on this channel, and I will see you guys back here on my YouTube very soon.